Hello, my name is Jessica Krause and welcome to MedLaw. Today I'm joined by Abby Rose Gardner, Sophie Jones, and Ashley Tyson as we discuss the issue of period poverty among young people within Indigenous Australian communities. Thank you for joining us today. Period poverty has been defined as a lack of knowledge of menstruation and an inability to access necessary sanitary materials. Medically, periods are multifaceted in their impact, requiring easy access to and disposal of sanitary materials, clean water, pain management, and the like. The absence of these requirements can have severe ramifications. Legally, this is an important issue as many of these necessary requirements fall under human rights discussions or are in some way controlled or regulated by the government. Abby, what are the primary issues that arise in discussion of period poverty amongst young Indigenous Australians?
There are arguably two main overarching issues in relation to period poverty among young Indigenous Australians: accessibility and education.
Can you elaborate on what accessibility means in the context of period poverty?
Of course, so when considering accessibility, this barrier not only refers to the lack of accessibility to menstrual products, but also a lack of access to facilities, hygiene resources, and culturally tailored education. Firstly, in terms of accessing menstrual products, we do see communities with high proportions of young Indigenous women, often located in rural or remote locations. Due to freight costs and lack of competition in these areas, period products have been seen to increase by as much as 100%, creating a further financial barrier. Additionally, there may only be one store within a town where sanitary items are able to be purchased. And if the server is known to the customer, for example, a male relative, the individual may not purchase products out of shame or embarrassment. So, this can often lead to the use of other unhygienic alternatives such as socks, rags, or toilet paper.
Sophie, could you elaborate on the issue of education?
Sure, provision of menstrual health education within Australian schools is very limited. Due to competing resource demands and a focus on other health issues, menstruation education remains inconsistent across schools, and young people may only receive one lesson on this annually. This is further exacerbated in remote Indigenous school systems where there are social and cultural norms that discourage open discussion, and access to culturally appropriate resources and equipment may be restricted. The limited provision of such education indicates that young people are not equipped to manage their period in a safe way.
Ashley, these sound like significant issues. Where is Australia at with this? What efforts have been made by the government to address this through legislation?
Well, Jessica, in 2019, the Australian government did amend their tax laws to remove GST on most period products. This is a great first step in reducing the battle against period poverty. In 2022, the ACT did release a bill called the Period Products and Facilities Access Bill, with the main objective being to reduce and prevent period poverty by providing free sanitary products in a number of different areas, including schools. This is helpful for at-risk peoples and touches on important topics for Indigenous communities, such as privacy and dignity in accessing these products. While the right to education is found in the Human Rights Act, inequality in this area is not seen as an immediate breach of the law, making it hard to initiate any change in the area.
What are the limitations of this legislation?
Yeah, so with less than 1% of Australia's Indigenous population living in the ACT, on a national level, this bill does fall short on impacting the community as a whole. Longevity of its positive impact is also questionable, as review of the bill's operations are only required every 3 years. As this legal framework will be paving a path for the other states and territories of Australia, and with the knowledge that each menstruating person uses between 16 to 22 period products per period, it is largely concerned that they do not have a long-term plan. Sanitary materials are also just one aspect of this multifaceted issue, and there is a large gap between what is being done and what needs to be done.
Period poverty amongst young Indigenous Australians seems to be quite a nuanced and ill managed area currently. Is there a need for a way forward? And what are some recommendations for reform?
There is definitely a need for reform, and given the complexity of the issue, a multi pronged approach is required to be implemented. With this in mind, we support the following proposals for reform. Firstly, a legislative one-size-fits-all approach is not appropriate, particularly considering the diversity between Indigenous communities. Conducting research led by Indigenous researchers or groups is vital in discussing actions to address period poverty. In March 2018, an Indigenous-led yarning circle determined that the number one action in terms of priority was to establish research controlled by the community. It is important that culturally sensitive methods, such as yarning circles, are utilised to ensure individual communities' needs and a consideration of lived experiences. Secondly, establishing a government partnership with organisations such as Share the Dignity to continue distribution of period products. To date, Share the Dignity has shipped over 190,000 plus products to remote Indigenous communities. It is evident that the continuation of distributing period products to those who are unable to access them is vital. Abby, do you have any other recommendations?
Thanks, Sophie. A third recommendation would be to both implement and strengthen education programs in schools for young people that's targeted towards both girls and boys. Currently, we see menstrual health is very stigmatized, and due to that can lead to many unintended and detrimental health outcomes. UNICEF have also recognized that to combat this, education targeted towards both boys and girls is important.
Thank you so much for tuning into MedLaw with us today, and we hope that this discussion of the issue of period poverty amongst young Indigenous Australians has increased your knowledge, your understanding, and your desire for change.